capitalism. You borrow money, you throw it into public works, and you expect the economy to grow. But of course, what simultaneously happens is you get inflation, which is why Biden lost power to the terrible, as they thought, the terrible Trump. But the problem is Britain is not America. It is not the reserve currency. It cannot borrow unlimited amounts of money. And even
the Iron Chancellor's meltdown, Rachel Reeves' catastrophic spending spiral. Before we dive into this absolute car crash of economic management, if you're not already subscribed to UK Connors, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you'll want to stay informed as this government continues its spectacular descent into fiscal madness. Right, let's get straight to it, shall we? The numbers are in, and they're absolutely terrifying. Rachel Reeves, our supposedly steady-handed chancellor, has completely lost the plot. And I mean completely. We're not talking about a minor miscalculation here or a bit of creative accounting there. No, this is a full-blown financial meltdown orchestrated by a woman who, frankly, has no business being anywhere near the Treasury. The latest borrowing figures have just dropped, and they're enough to make even the most optimistic Labour supporter reach for the smelling salts. Net public sector borrowing hit £83.8 billion in just the first 5 months of this fiscal year. 5 months. Let that sink in for a moment. That's £18 billion in August alone, which is significantly higher than anyone with half a brain cell predicted. At this rate, Reeves is on track to borrow over £200 billion this year. £200 billion. That's not just a big number. That's a catastrophically enormous number that should have every thinking person in this country deeply, deeply concerned. The original forecast was £150 billion, which was already eye-watering. But no, that wasn't enough for our Rachel. She smashed through that ceiling like a wrecking ball through a paper wall. Now, here's where it gets really interesting in the most horrifying way possible. We're not in the middle of a global pandemic. We're not fighting a world war. We're not dealing with some unprecedented natural disaster that requires massive emergency spending. So why on earth are we hemorrhaging money at this rate? The simple answer is because Rachel Reeves has absolutely no idea how to manage public finances, and she's proving it spectacularly every single day. Remember, this is the same woman who had her parliamentary credit card confiscated because she couldn't manage her own expenses properly. The same woman who claimed she was struggling to make ends meet on a combined household income approaching £250,000. If you can't manage your own finances on that kind of money, what makes anyone think you can handle the entire country's economic policy? But here's the truly maddening part about all this. Reeves keeps banging on about fixing the foundations and restoring stability, as if saying these meaningless phrases enough times will somehow make the numbers add up. It's like watching someone try to put out a house fire with a water pistol while insisting they've got everything under control. The reality is that Labour has raised taxes to levels we haven't seen in decades. They've gone after everyone and everything they can think of. Inheritance tax, capital gains, corporation tax, you name it. They've squeezed every penny they can out of the British taxpayer, and it's still not enough. It will never be enough because they fundamentally don't understand that you cannot spend your way out of a spending problem. And let's talk about what this borrowing is actually going toward, because it gets even more depressing. Roughly £150 billion of this year's borrowing will go straight to paying the interest on Britain's existing debt. That's right, we're borrowing money just to pay the interest on money we've already borrowed. It's like taking out a credit card to pay off another credit card, except the stakes are the entire British economy. The bond market are watching all of this unfold, and they are getting increasingly nervous. If they lose confidence in Britain's ability to manage its finances, gilt yields will spike, borrowing costs will go through the roof, and we'll be in an even deeper hole than we are now. It's a vicious cycle that could spiral out of control faster than you can say IMF bailout. During the campaign, Reeves promised she would never play fast and loose with public finances. Fast and loose? This isn't fast and loose. This is financial vandalism on an industrial scale. This is taking a sledgehammer to the Treasury and hoping for the best. You can see it in her face every time she appears on television. The woman looks absolutely shattered. There's a permanent look of barely controlled panic in her eyes, like someone who's just realized they bet the house on a three-legged racehorse. It's almost tragic on a human level, watching someone so clearly out of their depth trying to keep up appearances while the entire edifice crumbles around them. But this isn't just about one person's political career or mental health. This is about the future of our country. Every pound that Reeves borrows today is a pound that future generations will have to pay back, with interest. She's mortgaging our children's future to fund her ideological spending spree, and she doesn't seem to care one bit about the consequences. Labour's solution to all of this? They want to implement a wealth tax that they claim could raise £10 billion annually. £10 billion. That sounds like a lot until you realize they need to find another £190 billion to balance their books. Where exactly is that money supposed to come from? They never say, because they don't know. They're making it up as they go along, and it shows. The truly terrifying thing is that there's no obvious way out of this mess under the current government. Reeves tried to cut health and sickness benefits by £5 billion, which would have been a sensible start, but Labour's own backbenchers revolted and forced her to back down. If she can't even make modest cuts to welfare spending without facing an internal revolt, how on earth is she supposed to tackle the biggest structural problems? We're on track to spend £100 billion annually on welfare by the end of this parliament. £100 billion every single year just on benefits. That's not sustainable, it's not responsible, and it's certainly not the kind of fiscal responsibility that Reeves claimed to represent during the campaign. The worst part is that the Conservatives weren't much better when they were in power. They talked a good game about fiscal responsibility, but they were almost as profligate with public money as Labour is proving to be now. And don't even get me started on Reform UK, who seem to think they can solve all our problems without making any difficult decisions about spending. This is what happens when politicians prioritize popularity over responsibility, when they promise everything to everyone and hope that somehow, magically, the numbers will work themselves out. Well, the numbers aren't, and they most certainly do not work themselves out. The harsh reality is that Britain is heading for a financial reckoning. The only question is whether it happens gradually, through a series of increasingly painful adjustments, or suddenly, through a complete collapse of confidence in our government's ability to manage the economy. At the current rate, I'm betting on the latter. Keir Starmer should do everyone a favor, including Rachel Reeves herself, and remove her from the Treasury before she does any more damage. The Chancellor role is clearly having a devastating effect on her well-being, and her continued presence in that position is having an equally devastating effect on the country's finances. But will he do it? Probably not. Labour governments have a tendency to stick with their failed policies and failed personnel long past the point where any sensible person would call for change. They'll keep tinkering around the edges, making minor adjustments here and there, while the fundamental problems get worse and worse. In the meantime, Reeves will continue to play with her budget figures, knowing full well that the entire economic house of cards could come tumbling down at any moment. She's gambling with our future, and she's playing with a losing hand. The most frustrating thing about all of this is that it was entirely predictable. Anyone who looked at Labour's spending promises during the campaign and did the basic mathematics could see that the numbers didn't add up. But they won anyway, and now we're all paying the price for their economic illiteracy. So there you have it. Rachel Reeves, the Iron Chancellor who turned out to be made of papier-mâché, presiding over a fiscal disaster that will define British politics for years to come. It would be funny if it weren't so absolutely terrifying for everyone who has to live with the consequences. This is just the beginning, I'm afraid. The real pain hasn't even started yet. When the bond markets finally lose patience, when inflation starts climbing again, when businesses start leaving the country in droves because they can't afford the tax burden, that's when we'll see the true cause of Reeves' reckless spending spree. The numbers don't lie, even when politicians do. And right now, the numbers are telling us that we're in serious trouble. Keep watching UK Corners for more analysis as this economic car crash continues to unfold. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Trust me, you'll want to stay informed as we document the spectacular collapse of Labour's economic credibility.